Hey everybody, welcome to Krown Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan. His name's Andrew Wadden. Andrew, how was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it's fantastic. Big bird, all the fixins, pumpkin pie, buddy. How was yours?
You had some pumpkin pie, you had some turkey, did you? Mine was not great. We had ham. Who has ham on Thanksgiving?
Where did you have this Thanksgiving dinner then?
My grandma's house.
Grandma done failed.
Grandma don't never fail. It was a surprise, the ham, though. To nobody's surprise, though, Concordia got smacked by Laval 2 weeks ago, 32-16. Segue. Our own Gord Randall in our roundtable portion gave them some much-deserved props. Who are we kidding, though? You're not going to beat Laval this season. However, a battle for second place with the somewhat but not really inconsistent Montreal Carabins could be a solid matchup. Could be a solid matchup. Could be a solid matchup. Montreal visiting Concordia. Mikhail Davidson scoping out the field in warm-up. He would get Montreal on the board first. He takes this punt return off the hop, and he is gone like a bullet out of a gun that shoots bullets. 75 yards for Davidson all the way to the house, and the Carabins lead 6-0. Colin Sequeira for Concordia then puts an extra 10 yards under this toss. A horrible throw, and it lands in the arms of Anthony Cody. He makes a nice little spin move there to grab an extra 8 or 9 yards. Montreal sitting pretty after the pick. Then it's Cousineau looking deep for who else? Mikhail Davidson once again. This is his second touchdown of the day. He finished the game with 157 all-purpose yards. Montreal up 20 blank. They'd cap it off with another bomb. Cousineau scrambling, looking like a young Sean King, and he finds Regis Sibasu from 46 out. Game over. Montreal destroys the Stingers 36-3. Concordia has now lost their last 2 games to the best 2 teams in the RSEQ, Laval and Montreal, by a combined score of 68-19. They'll have a bye next week before heading to Sherbrooke, while Montreal takes a week off as well before getting set for their mid-season gimme at Bishops.
Well, it wasn't pretty, but the Bishops Gators get their first win of the 2014 campaign with a 17-13 win over McGill. The stats, yeah, not so impressive for the Gators, just 53 passing yards on the day. Bishops used a steady ground game and a key defensive play to hold on for the win. With under a minute to go in the game, Redmond pivot Joel Huel was picked by Joshua Miller on the Gators' 11-yard line, sealing the win for the visitors.
All right, let's take a look now at your RSEQ standings. Laval, without the game this week, stays in first place, undefeated at 5-0. Montreal, with the win over Concordia, improves to 5-1, locking up second place. They are followed by the Stingers, Sherbrooke, Bishops, and McGill.
There was a time not too long ago that the St. Mary's Huskies were the class of the CIS. The Huskies once beat, get this, the Mount Allison Mounties by a score of 105-0. You heard me right, 105-0. Now the tables have turned in the AUS, and it's time for the Mounties to do the whipping on the Huskies.
So off we go to Sackville. A little pregame conversation going on between the two sides, probably asking what frat house the party is at after the game. You know, Ryan and I are going to do that. First cue, no score on the board. Brandon Lay hands it off to Emmanuel Masangu. Look out! Jay Langa lowers the boom, monster hit by the dreadlocked linebacker. Second cue, Lay looks over the middle and all he sees is maroon and gold. Josh Blanchard is as open as a nightclub on New Year's Eve. Jay Bizzle, yeah, that's his new nickname, I just coined it, takes it 55 yards all the way to the Scott's Turf enhanced end zone. That made it 10 nada Mounties. Next series for the Dogs, 4-string QB John Legault gets picked. Donnovan Saunders snags it and takes off. Looking to make it to the end zone, leaps one defender, but gets taken down at the 1, which led to this Masangu touchdown, who then proceeds to hand the pigskin to his offensive lineman who shows that ball who the boss is. That's right, big man. You go, Tony Danza. With the win, the Mounties secure the top spot in the conference and are off to the Loney Bowl final. In the home-and-home series versus the Huskies over the last 2 weeks, Mount A has combined to win both games by an astounding 71-1. My, how the mighty Huskies have fallen.
St. FX, Acadia. After a pair of Ryan Bejan triples, there's one there, splits the pipes. We find Brian Jones taking this 46-yard bomb from Thompson Richards, the double last name combo. It's very nice. He takes it all the way home. This makes it 13-0 for the X-Men. They would not look back. 26-4, your final score. Looking over the numbers for both teams, nobody really standing out. However, Tavon Cook throwing 4 interceptions on the day. With the loss, St. FX falls to 3-3, while Acadia nipping at their heels at 2-4.
Standings around the AUS, Mount Allison is headed to a second straight Loney Bowl. That we know. The Mounties are also looking to be the first team since the 2001 St. Mary's Huskies to go 8-0 on the year. St. FX and Acadia will play one another in the AUS semifinal. That too we also know. However, it's still undetermined who will host that game. A win for X over SMU combined with an Acadia loss to Mount A will lock up home field for the X-Men in the semifinal.
Nobody gives the Windsor Lancers the respect they deserve because of that Queen's Asterix win/loss in Week 1. Wins speak louder than words, though, and after a spanking at the hands of the Guelph Griffins 2 weeks ago, Austin Kennedy and the boys needed a good bounce-back game, and they couldn't have handpicked a better opponent to have it against if they tried. In the face of adversity, though, Ottawa has been decent?
GG's Lancers. Late first cue, Nick Vincent takes this one in, no problem, from 2 yards out. It's 7-1 Windsor just like that. Austin Kennedy with a little handoff to Terrence Crawford. He shakes a man, he finds daylight, he cuts to the outside, no doubt about it. He breaks out a little Victor Cruz salsa at the end to celebrate. No jump bump, no Cam Newton Superman Jazz Lindsay. Well played, Crawford. To end the first, then AK hits Evan Pajonik for a huge gain. It would lead to a triple. Nicely done. Windsor leads 17-1 in the second frame. Kennedy then hits Dallas Boo. Watch the block, though. That's Gilbert Stewart with the pain train. He rocks Zach Wilkinson right into next week. Beauty hit. It would lead to this Bo Lumley short scamper. Put another major on the board. Windsor starting to run away. It's 24-1. Ottawa would show some signs of life, though. Bryce Vieira takes in this one from 2 yards out. It makes it 24-8. Vieira wasn't done there. He falls after a missed block, gets right back up, makes the grab, and he goes east-west. His coach probably not loving it, but he makes it work. Do what you gotta do, whatever floats your boat. If it works, don't fix it. 3 cliches that all relate to what Bryce Vieira did on this run. It's 24-15 Windsor at the half. Terrence Crawford would respond for the Lancers. He takes this handoff and he finds daylight. He finds room out there, jukes out the last man, and he's almost completely gone. Not quite, though. He's taken down at the 4-yard line. An 81-yard scamper results in a 4-yard toss to Dylan Whitfield. It's 33-15 for the hometown Lancers. Ottawa still coming as Derek Wendell hooks up with Bryce Vieira once more, his third on the day. They would get another shot near the red zone, but Wendell picked this time by Quinton Elliott. Game, set, and match. 39-28, your final score from Alumni Field. So the Lancers improved to 5-1, tied for second in the OUA. They'll have to stay sharp as well as they head to Carleton next to take on the always pleasantly surprising Carleton Ravens.
Ravens and Griffins locked horns at Moo U. A rare Friday night game at Alumni Stadium. Ravens in need of a win to keep their playoff aspirations alive, but this is not a good start for the young birds. Nick Gorgachuk gets plucked by Michael Carney, who takes it all the way to the Carleton 5. That led to a Guelph field goal. Dying seconds of the first cue, Johnny Augustine takes the handoff from Jazz Lindsay, powers his way through the flock of Ravens, eventually taken down at the Carleton 1. Augustine then finishes off what he started, Guelph up 10 Cobb. Second cue, and the Ravens look for a spark. Gorgachuk goes airborne for Nate Bahar, who makes a fine grab, but they can only manage a field goal out of it. With the score 14-3 now, Gorgachuk and Bahar hook up once again. Bahar putting on the afterburners there. I said it once, I'll say it again. This kid is dynamite. Guelph lead cut to 4. But that's the closest the Ravens would come. Right before the half, Daniel Palmer-Salmon takes the handoff, and DPS follows the GPS to the end zone, but he'd come up a few yards short. So, Lindsay calls his own number on the option and takes it right to Moneyland. And wait for it. You think Jazz has got a poster of Cam Newton up on his wall in his dorm room? I would bet that he does. Griffins take down the Ravens, smacking the Young Birds by 20. Despite not having the nation's fourth leading rusher, Rob Farquharson, in the lineup, the Griffins still managed to rush for 251 yards in the win.
Gales, Varsity Blues. Queens gets on the board first. Billy McPhee scrambles a little and puts a ton of air under this one. Carmichael Curtis, as he's known at the library, pulls it down. It's 7-blank in style for the Gales. Richardson Stadium is loving it. Now trailing 10-3, Simon Nasser hits Boris Isakov. You got me blacklisted at Hop Sings. It's 10-10, a tie ball game. A few possessions later, and Alex Carroll pulls this Billy McPhee gift down from 22 yards out. I don't understand the celly, but I appreciate the innovative effort nonetheless. Simon Nasser likes what he sees out of the Gales, and he puts up a replica pass to once again Boris Isakov. He named names. Following a Dylan Walmsley triple, Billy McPhee hits Alex Carroll for a pickup of 24, but he drops the ball. Curtis Carmichael tears off the ribbon and paper of the gift of the game. It's 34-20 for the Gales. Toronto down, but they're not out. Nasser finds Levi Noel from 51. He becomes the first CIS quarterback to hit the 2,000-yard mark this year, and it's 41-27. Nate Hobbs checks in late in the fourth for Queens and locks this one up. He finds Doug Corby. It's a 60-yard catch and run. This thing is done. Queens gets a win, their first win, 48-27, your final score. As mentioned, Simon Nasser became the first QB in the CIS to hit the 2K for yardage, while Billy McPhee moved into second on the Gales' all-time yards passing list with 7,775, passing two-time Heck Creighton winner Tom Dennison.
Laurier at Western. The Purple Ponies looking to bounce back after losing to Mac. Daryl Wadd welcomes G-Hawks pivot James Fracas into the game with Will Finch out due to injury. Stevenson Bone gets his first career start under center. Here he connects with George Johnson, and just like that, it's 14-0. Then Bone shows off his footwork, slicing his way to the far sideline. The second-year pivot turns two G-Hawk defenders inside out before eventually being taken down at the 20. Bone then decides to finish what he already started. Looking like a young Russ Jackson, he knifes his way into the purple fun dip, and he's a little jacked up about it too. Western leads by 29 at the half. Third Q, and Bone continues to penetrate the G-Hawk secondary. Adam Sinclair is as open as a 7-Eleven on Christmas Day. Right before the end of the Q, Bone sticks the G-Hawks again. This time it's Brian Marshall with the major. This one's long gone for the G-Hawks, but here's a little taste of the action firsthand for you. Here he comes! Nice little shot right there. Western improves to 5-1, clipping the G-Hawks by 41. Bone was dynamic in his first start under center, connecting on 76% of his passes in the win. Laurier running back Dylan Campbell had his worst outing of the season, yet still managed to rush over the century mark for a sixth straight game. DC is the only running back in the entire CIS to have over 1,000 yards rushed this year.
Let's take a look now at the OUA standings. Not much change. McMaster, they are still in first place, 6-0. Western, Guelph, Windsor tied at 5-1, followed by Laurier, Ottawa, Carleton, Queens, Toronto, York, and the Waterloo Warriors.
With the Canada West off for the turkey break, here's how the standings break down. Calgary and Sasky are locked atop with 4-1 records. However, the Dinos do hold the tiebreaker between the two. The real battle is for those last two playoff spots. Regina, UBC, Manitoba, and Alberta all vying to get in.
You know, before we go to break, I gotta apologize for my behavior at the start of the show, and I gotta apologize to my grandma. I love you. The ham was delicious. It's not traditional, but it was delicious.
You just gave her another dig there. It's your grandma, man. Like,
I know.
come on.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. Why don't you throw it a break? Because I can't do anything right.
All right, well, coming up, we got Jim Mullin and another one of those Vanier Cup features he loves to do. I'm going to console Ryan. You're watching Crown Countdown U.
I love you, Grandma. I love you.
Here's where you can catch CIS action on your television this weekend.
two of the greatest quarterbacks of their eras, Danny Brannigan and Eric Glavich, met in the 2009 Vanier Cup in Quebec City.
The 45th Vanier Cup was a spectacular game. Two-time Heck Crichton Award winner Eric Glavich leads the Calgary Dinos into the Pep Stadium to take on the Queens Golden Gales. It's going to be Danny Brannigan's last game as a CIS quarterback. Picking this one up in the second, tied at 7-all, Aaron Ifield, 3 straight field goals. Puts up 9 points in about 6 minutes. Then Eric Glavich for the 1-yard TD plunge, plus a safety. That means the Dinos have an 18-point lead going into halftime. Calgary coach Blake Nill is 10-0 when leading at halftime. They're celebrating in Calgary already, but nobody told Danny Brannigan. Just a minute into the second half, Brannigan hits Devon Shahan for a 60-yard score. Danny Village adds a field goal. Calgary's lead is just 6. And then Brannigan finds Scott Valberg for his second TD. Queens leads by 1. Marty Gordon will add an insurance score. Queens lead 33-25. The Dinos are not extinct yet. Glavich driving, Glavich completes to Anthony Parker. Parker scores from 15 yards out. Queens lead is cut to 2 points. And the Blake Nill Calgary Dinos want the 2-point convert. They will not get it. Blake Nill 10-1 when leading at halftime. Queens pulls out the biggest comeback in Vanier history to win 33-31. And of course, Danny Brannigan winning the Ted Morris Trophy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Krown Countdown U. It's time again for that beautiful roundtable portion. We have Jim Mullin on the far side of the table, and we also welcome in, live from Toronto, Ontario, Donnovan Bennett of Rogers Sportsnet. Donnovan, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure. I know when you said beautiful, you weren't talking about me, but I'm loving talking about football.
Yeah, exactly. It still works. We're going to start with you for the first question here. We're looking for the top of the class. I mean, we've all seen enough CIS football that we can kind of make our picks here. Who stands out to you so far this season?
Well, it's a great question. I think for me, I'm going to go with the team that's been ranked #1 the entire year in Laval, but more so because of a newcomer. You know, when you're new in school, the new kids sit at the front of the class, and the guy running that team, Hugo Richard, has done a beautiful job and leads the nation in passing per game with over 300 yards. Is third in TDs with 12, but he's played 2 less games than the guy who leads in Derek Wendell, who's got 15. And for me, what he does for them is now when you go and play Laval, you know you're going to have to get off the bus and score 30 points. And perennially, we know they have great defense, but he changes the dynamic. I think with Cousineau at Montreal, they thought with his growth, they're going to be able to close the gap against Laval because of their offense. With Richard, they're taking it to another level.
Jim.
As for me, let's go over to Atlantic Canada. Everybody wondered in Mount A how they were going to replace Jordan Botel. Well, the answer really came about 3 games in with Chris Reed, who was averaging 124 yards per game. They didn't get the guy started until week 3. Only 1 carry for 3 yards against Acadia in the opener, 9 for 62 against SMU in game 2, and then he went off. He's got a shot, a really good shot at being a 1,000-yard rusher for Mount Allison. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Brandon Lay and the balanced game that they have, but really, for a guy to come out of the chute like this to replace a fifth-year player, kudos to Chris Reed.
All right, now I'm going to jump to the dunce cap so far this season. We probably could have made that question a little prettier, but nonetheless, Jim, we'll start with you. Who's wearing the dunce?
Well, let's stay in Atlantic Canada, shall we? And let's talk about the St. Mary's Huskies. Here's a team that had a great legacy that was built up through Larry Utek and Blake Nill, and they have really dropped off the map this year. Not only are they winless, but they had discipline problems in the offseason with players suspended. Their stadium was basically a rotting hulk. They had to have the thing torn down. Yes, they've replaced it with new turf at St. Mary's, but basically they've got bleacher seats all around. They can never seem to resolve the issue of a stadium in Halifax. I know there are some plans going forward, but you've got a team right now that is misfiring on the field. They're misfiring off the field, and it's really up to the administration to set some new priorities, because the flagship team out in Atlantic Canada always was the St. Mary's Huskies, and the university needs to see some value in that.
Donnovan, we'll go to you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're wearing a dunce cap because it's a very prestigious school with a lot of high academic players. But for me, it's Queens. When you look at a team who was in the Yates Cup a year ago, has a fifth-year QB, they're getting ready to rival, the Westerns and the Macs of the OUA and win another Yates. And the fact that they were eliminated from the playoffs before Thanksgiving, to me, even if you take out the issue with an ineligible player, they weren't a good football team all year. And I think they're really feeling the loss of Pat Tracy, who was more than a defensive coordinator, who was a pseudo coach. And look at all the talent that's come through Richardson Stadium. The fact that in the last 17 years, they've only won one Yates Cup is pretty damning.
Who so far is the most exciting team that you've seen, Donnovan?
Well, it's not only for positive reasons. For some reasons, it's negative. Well, if you're Brian Dobie, it's negative anyways. For me, it's Manitoba. It's because I love to watch their games because there's going to be a lot of points scored going both ways. You look at all their contests, they've all been 60-plus total scoring, except for one against UBC where the final was 20-10. But they've got explosive athletes on both sides of the ball, and sometimes those explosive athletes make explosive plays for you. Sometimes they get out of position, make explosive plays against you.
For me, it's the Alberta Golden Bears ever since Curtis Dell took over. Let's throw that Calgary game out. Yeah, we know it's a win with an asterisk, but since Curtis Dell has taken over this offense, they pushed Saskatchewan to overtime, and they lost by 1. They defeated Regina really on the last drive of the game by 2 to register their first win in God knows how long, and the students emptied onto the field, and there was a big celebration. Yes, they got blown out by UBC, but that didn't come until the second half. And then in the last game that they played, they beat those very same Manitoba Bisons that Donnovan was mentioning. That was by 1 score. And all the scores have been up into the 30s and 40s for Alberta. There's lots of points on the board. And plus, whenever they hit the field, there's going to be 1,000 yards between both teams. So the Alberta Golden Bears are easily my most exciting team.
Now, the biggest off-field issue facing the CIS, Jim, we'll start with you.
I think it's blowout games. And I think whether or not you have tiering or not in the CIS these days, unofficially there is. I think that Canada West and Ontario and the alumni surrounding some of these leading programs have to find an answer to get the good teams and the well-financed teams playing each other, and some of the other teams can kind of find their way playing against each other within the same conference, of course. I think crossover is absolutely essential for the future of the game in Canada.
Donnovan, out to you.
Well, for me, it's the ineligible players that we continue to see and how they affect the competitive balance in the league. And really, the teams who have ineligible players aren't the ones being punished. You mentioned earlier Calgary and the fact that they're going to win the Can West, barring something crazy happening, regardless of the fact they lost a game they really won 71-3 to Alberta. Same thing with Queens. They're not going to make the playoffs whether or not they got that win against Windsor or not. And Windsor and Alberta, they're benefactors out of random chance because the schedule god said they were playing a team who's playing an ineligible player. So who suffers? Laurier suffers. Ottawa suffers. Saskatchewan may suffer, although I doubt it. Manitoba, surely, now they're in a more precarious situation. So the fact is, we have this friendly fire where these innocent bystanders who have nothing to do with the ineligible player, their competitive balance and all the hard work that they do to get into the playoffs, to get a possible bye, to get a home date, those things are affected because other teams didn't have their ducks in a row. I don't think the punishment really is fitting the crime. So I think we got to look at, one, the oversight for these rules and also the application, because the people getting punished aren't really feeling, the blunt of the punishment.
All right, and as always, we will finish off with quick hits, but we're running a little low on time. Let's go 15 seconds or less. You gotta go quick, Jim.
That's quick. Windsor, their attendance is up 360% from last year. It's because they have an entertaining team, and they finally decided to sell the team, and they're surrounded by Detroit. And so that's a tale that can be told to the folks in Toronto and the folks in Vancouver. You can sell university football in a metro town.
That was 18 seconds. Donnovan, out to you.
All right, well, I'll be quick. Uniforms, I love what I'm seeing. You want to look good and play good, you have to dress well. Shout out to Adidas and Nike and Under Armour outfitting these teams. Saskatchewan and Montreal, obviously Calgary, Guelph. Lots of great uniforms in CIS, and the product looks better on the field.
I noticed you didn't say Queens. Just throwing that out there.
Well, you know what? I love the tradition with the one color, but I think we still need some work with the tricolor.
Gord Randall's not here, so we can chirp him. It's okay. Thank you very much, Donnovan, for joining us. Much appreciated. For Jim Mullin, Andrew Wadden, I'm Ryan Sullivan. Thanks again for tuning in, and stay tuned for our CIS Top 10.
Number 10. Number 9. Number 8. Number 7. Number 6. Number 5. Number 4. Number 3. Number 2. And number 1. Thanks for watching Krown Countdown U. Now, let's get out to the game.